Stand for the pledge, please. Oh, yeah. Are we on? Are we good? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, take the roll.
Morissette.
Here.
Alms.
Here.
Jazeel.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Adkins Hoggett. Here. Hall.
Here.
Mayor.
Here. All right, first thing we have is a presentation with an introduction of our interim library directors, Shelley Togas and Madeline Page. Yeah, right up there would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks so much for having me. Madeline Page couldn't join me. She sends her regards and with some news because she finalized our opening today and it went really well.
Good.
July 6th is the 10-year anniversary of when we opened the doors to the building. We still call it the new building at the library. And so we reopened today. Hours of 10 to 2, 15 people at a time. We had 110 come through. So at times there was a line, but people were patient. They were very gracious, and almost all were wearing masks. And so it went very, very well. And we were thrilled to see them back.
Excellent.
So, yeah, we'll keep you posted on how it's going as we move forward.
Great.
So Madeline and I are both raised in River Falls, actually, and we've worked together at the library for 4 years and became Tina Norris's right and left hands. So when she decided to leave us, she thought it made sense that we would step in and be interims. I wanted to give you just a little bit of background about me, not spend too much time on that because there are things I want to tell you about the library and services during the pandemic. My career included journalism, public relations, with a specialty in community engagement and advocacy. And then I took some time off to be home with my daughter, and I did a lot of freelance work. I was adjunct faculty at Minnesota State in public relation campaigns, and I did freelance marketing. And I developed an expertise in children's literature, writing fiction and nonfiction for kids, including 4 novels with Macmillan. And that's what led me into the library world. About, I would say, a year and a half ago, Tina asked me to take over all the programming. And we put together a team of the librarians based on specialties and developed a sort of team planning concept because our goal was to increase the quality, the diversity, and the frequency of our programming. So our first year as a team working on that, we had 20,000 people come to programs at the library, which was up over 9,000 from the previous year. So we've had some great success with the model that we've adopted, and I work with amazing people, and I'm eager for them to get to know some of you better so you can understand what we're doing at the library. So the pandemic, that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Like everyone else, we had to close our doors. We recreated our service model in less than a week because we decided, even though we were going to close the doors, that we wanted our taxpayers in this community and all of our communities to have access to the things that they're paying for, programs and books, the collection being the core services. So we came up with a virtual programming model and started a YouTube channel. If you go there, please subscribe. You will find our STEM activities, craft activities. We do author interviews, community interviews. Our NASA educator, Chris Mick, is doing a series of interviews of young women in these incredible STEM careers. A woman from Israel who's working on the space program, for example. And we decided to run that in place of our Girl in STEMs program, but so they can see all the fabulous opportunities that are available to them. So we've been featuring a lot of programs like that on YouTube. We're also doing interactive programming using Zoom, which you can imagine is a bit of a challenge, especially with kids, but we're making it work, and we've done some really fun things. Like I did a scavenger hunt with kids from their homes, and I would tell them, go find a black sock, and they'd run all over the house and come back with a black sock. And it was just a great time, and parents are so appreciative that their children had something to do. We also set up, it's called Discord, and it's a forum that a lot of teenagers like to use. Our teen librarian has set up teen book chats, teen music chats, writing club, Dungeons and Dragons club, our teen advisory board, and he's getting better turnout than what our teen programs get in the building. So I think if we come out of this and we study the lessons we've learned being forced into a new model, there are pieces that we're going to continue, and some of that will be virtual programming for teens because it's in their wheelhouse. And they might want to come to the building. They don't always have transportation, or they have a license but no access to a vehicle. So this was a really cool thing for us to be able to try out and see how well it worked. We also set up a virtual library center with all the community resources, COVID resources, play things that kids could do online, academic support, and that sort of thing. And we kept our phones open. They were transferred, the calls would transfer into staff's homes. And a lot of it was just reassuring some of our elderly patrons that they're going to be okay, that we were looking out for them. We checked on some of them to make sure they were doing okay. And as soon as we were allowed to do curbside, we started the curbside service. And we're continuing it despite being partially open. There's some people who just simply aren't going to be comfortable to come back yet. And we want them to be able to get materials they want without having to have any contact with anyone. What we're trying to do now to sort of expand some of our access, the school-aged care, the summer program, they don't have access to their media centers this year because of the pandemic. And that means they can't get to their books. So we're bringing bins of books to the school for kids to have time to do reading during the day. And we're also letting the district use our page turner subscription, which gives them access to national programming like magicians, famous author interviews, and things like that they can use because their programming options this year are very limited, as you can imagine. We're also taking bins of books to some of the senior living complexes. So they can quarantine them for 72 hours and be assured that they're safe for their residents to pick up and read. And then when they're done, we will come and get the books and bring them some more. So those are some of the things we've been trying to do to serve the community. And it's been a challenge for all of us. But I think it's showed our community some of the best of us as well. So I really appreciate your time. I'd love to take any questions or comments if you have them. Otherwise, I'll let you get to your busy agenda.
Anybody? Shelley, thank you very much. Really appreciate the update on that.
Thank
you for
you.
being in here.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, give our best to Madeline.
I will do that.
All right, thanks. All right, next we have comments and suggestions from citizens present. Keep in mind if you're in here on the Zoom meeting and you have a comment, please unmute your microphone. And also keep in mind, if you would, that we do not allow comments on anything during this part of the agenda that we might have on the agenda farther down the list. So, are there any comments? Anybody here that would like to make a comment? Please come on up. Give your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Addison Filiatro. I live at 213 River Street in Hudson. I'm here as a resident of Hudson to request that you schedule an open city conversation on diversity and the justice system. I had sent all of you the petition as well as the signatures. Since I sent that to the mayor and our city administrator as well, since it has over 600 signatures, which is a lot of your constituents. Then I'd like it to be scheduled within the month preferably before the primary election, where all city council and city administrator and police chief are present. Since over 600 people signed this petition, overlooking it would be a mistake, as it wouldn't be, you'd be ignoring the voice of a large part of your constituency, and it wasn't what you were elected to do. Somebody said that I needed to say what it looked like more specifically, so again, it should be scheduled within the next month. Discuss how it would look with social distancing, because not everybody will be comfortable coming. Then find a neutral moderator. Comments and questions should be able to be submitted online as well as in person for people who can't attend due to COVID. It should be set for about an hour and a half. Then council members should listen and take notes to form a plan of action, and then use this information to think about what Human Rights or Race and Equity Committee would look like in Hudson, because that's also something that your constituents are requesting, and again, you're elected to serve them. So that is what I have to say. Additionally, I need to give somebody this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Addison. Any other comments? By the way, for those people that might be wanting to make a comment on Zoom, we can't see you with the setup that we have right now, so please feel free to just jump right on in and start speaking. Are there any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Consent agenda.
Approve the meeting minutes from June 15th, 2020 regular council meeting. Approve the claims in the amount of $993,332.89. Approval of Bricks Neapolitan Pizza, 407 2nd Street for a temporary expansion of the premise permit. Approve the renewal of an amusement device, owners William Lethart of Mendota Valley Amusement listed on the list sheet. Approve the renewal of taxi cab license for 2 vehicles for Magina Taxi LLC. Approve the issuance of the taxi cab driver's license as listed on the list sheet. Approve operator's license application as listed on the list sheet. Approve providing $600 in funding to the Lake Malibu Association for continued water testing.
Pull that one, please.
Yep. Approve the bid received from Zapper Brothers, Inc. in the amount of $119,842 for the 2020 storm sewer repair project. Accept the termination of the lease with the Hudson Boosters for the use of space at 6 St. Croix Street. And approve the request by Hill City Church to hold worship services at Lakefront Park on July 12th, July 19th, July 26th, 2020 at 9:30 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Move to approve.
We have motion and second to approve with the exception of item H. Roll call.
Marset,
Yes.
Alms,
Yes.
DeZiel,
Yes.
Weber, Jim,
You're muted, Jim.
Did you say yes, Jim?
Yes.
oh, here we go. Atkins Hoggett,
Yes.
and Hall.
Yes.
All right, motion's approved. Item H.
It was moved in finance to change that to $1,800 for 3 years. For the next 3 years to $1,800. Total.
Yeah.
So I will move to approve that $1,800 total for the Malibu Association.
Second.
Motion and second.
Paul and Jim both seconded.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion on staffing lifeguards for Lakefront Park Beach starting July 7th, 2020 through Labor Day 2020.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Mike Mraz, Director of Public Works and Parks. Just a quick update on the staffing levels for Lakefront Park lifeguards. Following the previous council meeting, staff posted availability or open positions to for people to come and apply for the lifeguard position. Luckily, we had fortunate success. We've had 5 confirmed applicants that are going to be starting tomorrow on a rotation basis, as well as 2 alternates. So a total of 7 guards available to assist us for the remainder of the season. So as I said in the memo, they will be starting tomorrow, July 7th.
Nice job, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion and possible action on ordinance 13-20, amending section 254-12 pertaining to impact fees.
We're not taking action on that at this,
No,
on the impact fees because.
because that's the one with the 20-day
that's the one
notice.
we need to
Yep,
Have the public hearing.
Oh,
right.
okay.
So I would say, is Christine, I can't tell. Oh, yeah, there she is. I think we should just, for basically, I think A, B, and C, and D here. If you want to turn over to Christine, she can quick review it again with the council, and then she'll let you know for sure which ones we want to take action on tonight. But Kathy's right, because with A, that's the one that we have to have a public hearing on, so that'll be delayed till August 7th, I think, or something like that.
First meeting in August.
But I would say at this time, if you want to turn over to Christine from Trilogy, she can run through everything and kind of go from there.
Okay. Yes, this is Christine DeMaster with Trilogy Consulting. Just to refresh everyone's memory, at the June 15th council meeting, we presented the results of our findings and recommendations for a water impact fee study and a sewer impact fee study and also a sewer rate study. So the first ordinance that you have in front of you would implement the findings or the recommendations on the impact fees. And what those recommendations were included rescinding the trunk sanitary sewer impact fee that currently applies to just the south east quadrant of the city, and rolling that into a citywide sewer connection fee that's implemented under your sewer user charge ordinance. And then on the water side, changing that water impact fee to, again, apply to any new connection to the water system throughout the city instead of just that southeast quadrant. And then we propose reducing the fee amount for the water impact fee and applying that on a per meter size basis instead of a per acre size basis. So the amendment to section 254-12 would implement those recommendations. And then we also reviewed that entire section just because Wisconsin statutes have changed a bit since this was last updated. So we made a few updates throughout the ordinance just to make it consistent with current Wisconsin statutes. So as Aaron said, this one would have to be have a public hearing before you can adopt this ordinance. And then the impact fee study needs to be available for public review at City Hall for 20 days prior to that public hearing. So the intent with this is to move this forward at the August 3rd council meeting. So I'd be happy to take any questions on this particular ordinance if anyone has any.
Just to clarify, this is strictly for sewer rates, not water, correct?
254-12 is impact fees. And so that one does include both water and sewer impact fees. The next ordinance we're talking about, 198-10, is strictly for sewer rates, yes.
So the impact fees for both are going down, correct, Christine? Basically?
Yeah, overall the impact fees would be decreased from where they're at today, yes.
We'll get to the water one, yeah.
When? Now?
I don't know.
Sewer is
Sewer.
the other ordinance.
Sewer's next, yeah.
Yep. So the sewer, we'll get to it in this conversation.
I'm just trying to find out if you revised change from what we had before and if there was any conversation from the state or any input that was taken.
I believe one of the questions that we did look at since the last meeting on the water was whether we could adjust those kind of peaking ratios for maximum day use and maximum hour use for the irrigation meters, if there was any room to adjust those down a little bit further, which would, tend to bring those rates down a little bit more. Eric Granum with Trilogy, who's also on this meeting, did take a quick look at that. I don't know if you wanted to just comment on that, Eric.
If you're strictly going based on the data that we have, there's really only, we're talking about margins as far as any further changes based on data. So, we'll present that to the PSC. We have not yet at this point, because they're still going through their review process. So at this point, there'd be no other changes to what was presented at the last meeting.
We talked about with the water rates for the irrigation that basically they would remain pretty flat based on where they are right now. Is that correct?
Yes, there'd be a moderate increase. Again, based on the numbers we have right now, about 11 cents per 1,000 gallons. The main portion of the charges that would be increased are in the public fire protection, which is based on meter size. That would see a higher increase.
So basically the irrigation rates are going to be about the same as what they are now. They're not going to go down, but they're going to remain fairly steady from what they are right now.
Right.
Doesn't address the issues of the constituents.
No,
concerned.
it does nothing to do with, so I think we talked about this last time. It doesn't do anything to do, it doesn't really address anything that happened in 2017 with that increase. And I think the issue with that is that historically we had the bulk rate for irrigation, which meant the more water you use, the less you paid. And we moved to this other rate in 2017 where it actually reflected that if you use more water, you end up paying for more water. So this will not address those issues, but there's really no way to address those issues unless you raise everyone else's rates fairly high. So if, let's say you wanted to put the irrigation rates back to the way they were, and this is assuming that the PFC would allow that to occur. But let's say the PFC would say, fine, if you want to go back to bulk rates, that's your choice. We'll let you go back to bulk rates for water. We still have to get to the same revenue number. So to make up for that difference, you would have to see everybody else's rates. Eric, do you remember how much they went up? It was a significant number.
It was about 50%.
Yep. So
it was substantial.
So every other user would have to go up 50% to make up for that. So a couple issues. One, we don't think the PFC will let us go back to bulk rates. The PFC is encouraging everyone, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is encouraging everyone to move away from bulk rates because the goal is not to encourage more water use. It's to bill appropriately for the amount of water you use.
So we should have never changed it, or we didn't have a choice.
I don't know about the choice part in 2017. I don't know what the PFC would have done if it was, I'm not sure about that part. So if we never would have changed it, I don't know that the PFC would have allowed it, but I don't know, Eric, Christine, do you know anything about that? That if in 2017 we would have said we want to stick with bulk, would they have said anything about that? I mean, I don't know if you can answer that even.
I could just say, yeah, they're moving away from that type of rate in particular for irrigation because they really want the rates people pay to reflect the cost that it takes to provide that service. And with the irrigation, because they're providing such a high peak water demand, that's reflective of the higher rate paid. So they are definitely encouraging utilities voluntarily as well as pushing, encouraging this type of shift in the rates.
I would just add too, I think your utility is a little bit unusual in the fact that you have so much water sales through irrigation meters. We definitely noticed that when we started taking a look at everything, that you have a large portion of your sales that are going to those meters. So I can't say for sure, whether PSC would have made you go to that route, but given the amount of sales you have through those meters, I think it's probably going to happen eventually.
Sounds like a classic government overreach.
So once the decision was made, going back, I think at this point would be difficult. Yeah. Like, I don't think we can go to PFC and say, we would like to go back to bulk. And like I said, even if they did say that, you would have every other user that's not irrigation seeing their rates go up about 50% to make up for that difference, which I think would cause then a whole new round of problems with your other users. So at this point, the best we can do for irrigation is try to keep it basically flat. But does not address that issue, like you said. Does not. Okay. All right. Christine, you want to move on to the next ones?
Sure.
Sewer, I think, is next.
Yeah, so for the sewer rates, we did present last time with the improvements that are coming up for the wastewater treatment plant and the debt service that the utility is going to have to take on for those improvements. We were looking at about a need for over the next 2 years, to have it in place by 2022 when you'll have full debt service on that project. Looking at an overall increase of about 47% in the sewer rates. Last time we presented at the meeting on June 15th, we presented 3 alternatives to get to that point. So we're not proposing any rate increase for 2020. The first one would take place on January 1 of 2021, and then the second one would be January 1 of 2022. So the 3 alternatives that we talked about last time were having a 38% increase for next year, and then another 11% in 2022. The second option would kind of flip that and have an 11% increase in 2021, and then another 38 in 22. And then the third proposal that we looked at was basically splitting that and doing half in 1 year and half in the next, which works out to 23.7% each year. So that was the sewer rates portion of that. And so the ordinance that you have in front of you does several things. One is that we just kind of went through it all and reviewed everything to make sure that we were, that the language in the ordinance reflects current practices for your rate structure and rate making. And there were a few other little cleanup items in there that we changed, and also just strengthened the language to make sure that it's clear that you're trying to recover capital costs in addition to operation and maintenance and replacement fund, because it was really focused more on the operation and maintenance in the prior language. So that's one piece of what we did. We also took out the specific rates out of the ordinance and added some language in there that you would adopt those by the rates themselves by resolution. So you also have a resolution that would put the rates in place. And then the third thing that we did with this ordinance under section, just scrolling down here, under section E, that's where you have that sewer connection charge. And so what we had recommended with the sewer impact or sewer connection fee study was to eliminate that trunk sanitary sewer impact fee and roll those conveyance costs, that the trunk sewer costs, into this sewer connection charge. And then also change that one to be applied to every property that connects, or any property that has a change in use that requires additional sewer usage or a larger meter would have to pay these fees. And then the other change is that we set this based on meter size rather than residential equivalent unit estimates. So under section E of this ordinance that addresses all of those recommendations for the sewer connection charge. And then on the resolution itself, we have in there some blanks. We've got the right rates plugged in there for 2022. The column for 2021 is left open at this point in time because at the last meeting, there was not a decision made on which option you would go with for phasing those rate increases in for 2021.
Right. So at this point, for item C, it would be the council would need to make the decision on what they would recommend for the for how to get to where the rates need to be. And the staff, well, I don't know, all staff, but my recommendation would be is to go with 11% in 2021 to try to keep the next year's rate as low as possible, increase as low as possible. And then the plan would be 38% in 2022, but we would review that again next year to determine what exactly that 2022 appropriate amount would be. But the intention would be that we'll be at that, potentially at that 38% in 2022. But if we've got to get to this number and we want to phase it out a little bit, I think the 11% for next year would be the most minor impact we could do for our ratepayers. So that would be my recommendation, at least, is to go with the 11% for 2021 and then 38% for 2022, but knowing that we will review this next year to verify what we need for 2022.
Yeah, this is just bad timing. You know, you can't predict the pandemic, but then, you know, everybody in government, business, has taken steps to mitigate or at least soften any issue of being hit with taxes or being hit with any other bills. And here we are looking to raise rates on these folks. And I don't agree with the timing. I don't agree with the rate increases. And I won't support it. Regardless if we have to do it or not, I'm not voting for it. I think it's bad timing. It just looks bad. And I don't agree with the numbers.
Is there any option to extend the period in which we would bring the rate increases in?
I think I can let Christina answer that a little bit, but I think our big issue with the sewer is the wastewater plant project. Because we're getting a state loan for that, we have to have certain debt coverages worked into our rates to be able to pay for it.
We've had so much back. We had that project money set aside for years.
So now because we got Christine, what's the loan called to the state? What's the name?
Clean Water Fund?
Yep. So we got the Clean Water Fund loan, and the interest rate on that is so low, we're using the Clean Water Fund loan for the wastewater project, then we're using that money in reserves for the other projects coming up, which is like the Highway 35 project next year and things like that, because we can't use the Clean Water Fund loan for that work. We can't get that loan there, but we can get it for the wastewater. So that the money is there, but it's going to be used for other projects that are happening next year now.
Dedicated funds for the wastewater treatment plant? Wasn't that what we said a long time ago?
All we have is just that's what the fund balance is within the sewer funds construction, I guess construction fund or whatever. So it wasn't necessarily said for this, but again, we could use it for this. You can use that money for this, but then that does mean that we would have to go and then do regular bonding for like the 35 project and these other projects that are coming up. And I'm not sure what the full list is, if Kip is on or not. What that full list of projects is, but we have a number of them that are coming up that we're intending to use that whole cash fund balance for, because we can get the money for the wastewater plant cheaper this way. So it would be, if we use that money for this, all we'd be doing at most is delaying the increase by about a year, and then the increase would end up being more because we're going to go out and bond for it, and we're not going to get that low of an interest rate on our bonds as we can get from the Clean Water Fund. So I think honestly what you're seeing is a backlog of projects that are now being done. And when we started scheduling all these out, like you said, nobody knew this was what was happening. But they're not the need for them is not going away. So it's how can we do this the best to try to minimize that impact while still kind of get these projects done. So we know we've got to do the wastewater project. Now, if we want to talk about using the cash for the wastewater project and then delaying these other projects, I think that's a bigger conversation that we need to have then. And we need to do that. We need to set that up at a future meeting then to be able to address that, to see if that's feasible or not, to push back these other projects, use as much of the cash or all the cash we have on hand basically for the wastewater project. And then I don't know what the impact is of delaying those other projects. That's something that, we'd have to let Kip and the engineers kind of tell us what that would mean. But that is a conversation we can have and delay this, I think at this point.
Well, I doubt we can delay the Highway 35 project.
Correct.
The other thing that I think we need to remember is that before 2017, we did not have any rate increases for about 20 years. So some of this, and we've got some of the lowest rates in the area. It's not fun raising rates, but that's the only way that we're going to get these projects done, and we have to get these projects done.
Yeah, I think a lot of thought was put into the presentation we had in June. I appreciate the level of detail. I appreciate the work toward a more equitable charge, which was kind of based on water usage, which I think makes sense. So I would look to approve these tonight. I don't know, Aaron, which specific
Spend.
pieces you're looking for. I think you said we have to delay the first one, Bart.
Yep.
Can we take action on some of the ones that are?
Yep. So if you want to take action on C, it would be picking what increase you want to see for next year. And again, my recommendation was 11% for next year, and then the anticipated 38% in 2022.
And do we have to suspend the rules? That's a resolution or an ordinance?
It's first.
Oh, do the ordinance first. So Kathy's saying do D first, and then do C.
And yes, you need to suspend the rules on both.
Paul, how are you going to justify that?
Okay.
I would move to suspend the rules.
Paul, how are you going to justify to your constituents spending this money now?
I will worry about that, Randy, when I talk to my constituents. I would motion to suspend the rules at this point.
You don't have an answer.
I do, Randy, but you know what? I don't feel like I personally need to justify my position with you. So we're going to move on to suspend the rules.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette,
No.
Alms,
Yes.
DeZiel,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved, rules are suspended.
Move to adopt, is it D we're starting with? Ordinance 14-20?
Yes.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to approve. So is that, do we have the numbers in there specifically for?
This is the ordinance. That will be the resolution.
C will be the one where we put
Okay,
numbers in.
all right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion's approved. Gonna take up the resolution.
Yeah, we're moving to C then. Move to approve resolution 14-20.
That would need a motion to
Suspend,
suspend also.
Oh, sorry, motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion and second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette,
No.
Alms,
Yes.
DeZiel,
Yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved, rules are suspended.
Move to adopt resolution 14-20.
And then we need to clarify, do you want the 11% increase next year?
And that's the only thing we need to clarify, right? I would
Yep.
prefer the 11% because it's lower than the 38% for sure.
Yep.
So those numbers from the study will be put into this
Yes.
resolution.
Yep. So we'll plug that in with just knowing that it's 11% for next year.
That's my motion, yeah.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Discussion?
I just have a point of clarification. So that the 11% is the least amount of increase we could potentially do in 2021?
Well, I mean, to clarify, you can do anything, but what staff is recommending based on where we need to get to for the projects, for the debt service, for the clean water fund and stuff, yes, 11 is the minimum that we are putting out there to meet that requirement, to get us where we need to be.
I personally think that evening it out over the 2 years seems a little more stomachable for the constituents, but I can go either way on this.
I think
Go ahead, sorry.
No,
I was
you
going to
should
say,
finish your
I
thought.
don't like having the 38 now and then 11 later. But I would, I would talk with any one of you or all of you about the middle of the road one where it was 23 point something 2 years in a row.
I think that 11% in 2021 and then the higher increase in 2022 would probably be a little bit easier. Hopefully we will be through COVID by the middle of 2021 and people will be back to work, things like that. So having a smaller increase for 2021 is probably a good way to make it a little bit easier on people. Yeah, 2022, it's going to be a big jump and people are going to be real surprised when they see their bills, but I think that this is the best that we can do for the city.
I also think if I'm hearing Aaron, if I'm hearing you correct, that we would have a year to try to figure out if there's a better way to do this.
We'll definitely review again before we commit to 2022 and see what options there are at that point for sure.
So there might be a way to roll this out over a longer period, perhaps, or something.
Perhaps, yep.
We might be able to figure out how to.
Yep. If we decide to do some cash work or something else and maybe delay some projects and things, we can work through that a little bit. Yes.
Okay.
And this is sort of where I'm kind of siding with what Randy was talking about, or Mr. Morissette. Looking at spring of next year, we don't know where we're going to be with COVID. I mean, so point of clarification, are you saying, Aaron, that the percentage increase may not have to go quite as high in 2022? It depends on where we're sitting?
Correct. I mean, I want you to recognize that this is what we see right now as what we need to get to in 2022. But that's using, like when we talked about with Randy's question, that's assuming that we do all the projects that we have anticipated doing with cash, that, you know, we use the full amount of the Clean Water Fund loan, those sort of things. But if we look at this next year and we look and see where the rates are, where our usage is at, if we look at some of these projects and decide maybe we don't need to do some of these projects and we can use some of that cash instead towards the Clean Water Fund loan or something like that, there may be ways. I don't want to promise anything, but I'm just saying that we will look at all the options and discuss those with the council to see what we can do for 2022.
And I feel like now is the time that we have to consider rolling up the sleeves to figure this out next year. I hate delaying, don't get me wrong, but I mean, we're talking COVID. We don't know where we're going to be in 2021. Now you're impacting everybody by 11% on their water. Even beyond sending the wrong message, I just think it's the wrong thing to do at that level.
Do you have an alternative idea, Bill? Is there something, a different way you can think about funding it?
I don't know. I would consider, I guess, half of 11%, whatever, but that would be 5.5%. But I feel right now, I mean, again, going with what Mr. Morissette was saying, I mean, it's the wrong time.
Well, we are allowing people to delay paying their bills if they are having trouble. They can contact the public utilities clerk and get a stay on it and without any penalties.
Sure, but the number is still out there, and I just, I just want to be considerate of our constituents. I don't want them being underwater, so to speak.
Could I ask Kip or someone else there that might know the answer? This isn't 11% on the whole quarterly bill. It's 11% of a line item on it, correct? So does anyone know what the average income, increase it would be on an annual basis, say for a pretty typical family of four? What's the dollar figure that 11% kind of equates with? And you could just even throw out a range.
This is Kip Peters, Utility Director, City of Hudson. I don't know that. Maybe Christine can answer that a little bit better. I know that they did work through that. You know, the one thing I guess I just want to throw out there also is that, you know, the rates that we're proposing, the sewer rates that we are proposing today, we do have to have these rates in place in order to close on our Clean Water Fund loan for the wastewater treatment plant project, which is currently underway. So, you know, we have to be able to assure the state of Wisconsin and the Clean Water Fund that we can actually pay this money back.
What's the deadline on that, Kip?
I'm sorry, what?
What's the deadline on that?
It depends on when we close on the loan. We're hoping to close on that loan yet late this fall is what we're hoping for.
We got time.
So now, I don't know if we have to have the 2022 rate case in, or the 2022 number there yet. But it just depends on when we close. And I've only done one of these, so I'm not sure. And maybe Christine has a little more. She might have done a bunch of these where she knows. But I do know that is a factor that we do have to consider, on setting these rates and dates. So we are promising that these will go into effect on a certain date, which guarantees that we will be able to meet our obligation to pay these back. So
Christine, is it correct that we had the summary in there? And so if we went with the under the proposed rates for 2022, so this would be after both years, so after the 11 and the 38, is that where it goes up? It goes up $20.36 a quarter on the average?
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's with both increases in place. So I was trying to just do some math here with just the 11%. That should be about $19 per year increase for your average residential customer for 2021, or about $1. Well, it's $1.60 per month, or whatever that is times 3, $4.80 a quarter, roughly, is what that 11% rate increase would mean.
Okay, thank you. I guess from my perspective, if I was going to get hit with a big increase, I like to ease it up rather than facing, some really big number a couple years down the road. Given that we're talking about, somewhere at most maybe $25-$30 for a year, I think I'm comfortable with the 11% now, because I think having what potentially would be a 50% increase or something like that down the road, and a delay of, the ramifications and implications that it sends to not start collecting it now, I guess I'm comfortable with $20 a family.
And understand what we're asking tonight is you are adopting the 11 and you're adopting the 38 for 2022, but just know that we can amend that as long as we can get to the right number, we can amend it. But as Kip talked about for that loan, they need to see that we're going to get to where we need to be for our coverages. So you're technically adopting both, but obviously the 2022 doesn't go into effect till 2022. And that's where we talk about having that chance to review and things. But I just want to make sure you understand, you can always change that. As a council, you have control over the sewer bills. You can always change that, but that's what you're adopting tonight, so we can show them what we're doing. But I think the part of it is that I know that the 11 and 38% are big percentage numbers, but when you look at the end of this, if we did both of those, 11 and 38%, your 2022 bill on that average house, it goes up $81 a year, which is still a significant number, I understand, but it sounds a lot worse when you're talking about 11 and 38% versus $20 a year and then another $60 a year the year after that.
And we had a community rate comparison in the rate study, and right now your average residential customer pays about $176 a year for sewer service. The average in your area is about $442 a year, and then with both rate increases in 2022, you'd be looking at about $257 a year. So you'd still be near the bottom of that list as far as what everyone else is charging. So
that all sounds reasonable, except for people only see the increase. They don't care where we fall compared to the people around us. Now you're out explaining what just happened, and they still got hit with an increase. Kip had said that we've got until fall. I would like to see the numbers on this. So the question that I have, I guess right now is, I understand they have to be able to see that we're going to be able to meet our obligation on the debt service. Is that right? The debt service. But we have, there are other resources that we have available to us.
Well, I think the conversation that we would have is, if we don't want to do the Clean Water Fund loan and we want to use cash on hand, what future projects can we delay? Can we push off to help mitigate this for right now?
Well, and I'm not going to advocate for pushing off projects. I guess I'd have to see a project list to be able to determine that. But I guess what I'm suggesting, are they saying that the only way that we can demonstrate to them that we can pay or do the debt service on this is through increased fees?
Or pay cash. I mean, you got to do
Sure.
one or the other.
Right.
Or both, a combination of both.
Okay.
It would have to be a combination of both because you've got, as of the end of 2019, a little under $6 million in total in all sewer reserve funds of all kinds. And a lot of that is, about 2 million of that was in the equipment replacement fund. So that's limited to what you can use that for. And some of that can definitely be used for this project, but that's for, vehicles and equipment, pumps and things like that that have a service life of less than 20 years. So there's some restrictions on that. So in this project you're looking at right now is what, about $12 million? Yeah. So that could get you some of the way there, but it wouldn't be able to get you all of the way there. And then the other piece of that too is it's always good policy to have some working cash on hand, just because revenues fluctuate, expenses fluctuate, things like that.
So Kip, or can you, okay, so what you're saying is like, so for example, the sewer project's costing us 12 million. We don't have $12 million in cash in the sewer fund to use. We have about 6 million, 2 million of that's probably restricted. So we really have about 4 million. Is that about what you're saying?
At most, yeah. But again,
So we could pay about a quarter of the cost with cash, but we never had the full amount for that in there. I don't know if we thought we did. I'm not sure the history with that, but basically what we got is about 4 million we can put towards that project, roughly. So you're still gonna, even if you do cash, you're not gonna be able to pay for it all. We're still gonna have to take out some sort of loan,
Sure,
to do some of it.
And what's the time frame to pay it back?
20 years.
20 years, and we're thinking if we graduate this in, that we're not going to be getting enough in fees to be able to meet our debt service obligation without having to turn to some other resource?
Correct.
I'm gonna look that way. I don't know all those answers.
Okay. All right.
And just so we're clear, the wastewater treatment plant project is 12.7. Sorry to throw that in there, but
Thank you.
that's about the actual number.
All right.
And like, oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and like Aaron alluded to, we know that the Highway 35 project, the engineer's estimate just on sewer, we're looking about 1.6 million for that. We know that with the continued growth of the city, there's lift stations that have to be upgraded to allow that capacity to happen. I want to say, just off the top of my head, we've probably got about 1.5 million just in upgrades that potentially are going to have to happen here in the near future. So the money that we have in the bank, it's sitting there, but I guess it's unofficially earmarked for certain things, because remember back when we did discuss the Clean Water Fund, we're getting that. I don't know if anybody knows right off the top of it, Christy, if you know what it is, but I want to say it was like 1.6, 1.7% interest rate.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where it is today, but it was discussed that it's going to be extremely difficult to get bonding at that level if we use our cash up on this wastewater treatment plant project and don't take advantage of the low interest rate that's being offered on this.
Can't go much lower.
In the following years, when we do have to do some of these Highway 35 project lift station upgrades, things of that nature, we will have to go out and bond for that. And I can't say for sure, but I'm willing to bet that we will not hit a 1.6, 1.7% interest rate on that. So that's kind of why we're planning on holding that cash, because we know we are going to be spending it in the future here, or in the near future. So just as a quick recap.
All right. Anybody else? We got a motion second in front of us.
This is Jim Weber. It seems to me it's much more obvious to raise rates for a massive rebuilding project as to over the next 5 years or so, be spending it for a maintenance project here, a maintenance project there. So I think this is much more saleable in terms of why are we doing this. and it makes sense to get that low interest loan. So.
Anybody else? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed?
No.
No.
I really only heard two ayes, but.
Yeah, that's.
I'm an aye.
I was an aye.
I'm an aye.
I'm an aye.
Okay. All right. Motion's approved. Let's see. Discussion possible action regarding mask requirements.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Do we have to go back to
A or B?
A?
Wait, what?
Not A. We did A.
B. B.
B is the one that it's on there, but we have to do a 20-day like public notice period and review period. So this will be on the August 3rd. B will be on the August 3rd agenda for approval.
Do we need to have a motion to set a hearing or anything like
Nope,
that?
we don't need to do anything with that one. It's not a public, well, I don't know.
Yeah,
if
it is a public.
Is it a public hearing on
for
it?
the impact fee yeah, to
okay.
amend the impact fee ordinance.
So is that what we're asking then, is to set the public hearing date? Do we need to do that?
Well, we just have to, as a matter of law, you can schedule it for,
Yep.
for that.
So we don't need a motion for it. We have to do it by law. So this is not one that, it's kind of a choice thing. So there's nothing we have to do with B right now. Sorry for the confusion.
All right. Discussion possible action regarding mask requirements.
So, well, I was the one that put this on our agenda. I realize for most everyone it's a controversial issue and topic right now. So therefore it's potentially not an easy conversation for us to have, but I put it on for a couple of reasons. Despite the fact that it's a difficult conversation, it's a conversation that's happening all across our country at all levels of jurisdiction. And so I didn't want us to, neglect to have that conversation. Additionally, it's been communicated to me by several businesses downtown. They urged me to have us talk about this. So that's why I put it on our agenda. I realize that we are not in a Hudson state of emergency and that, we can't come up with anything tonight that we might be willing to do, but a few things I'd like to, kind of say, just to kind of start out our conversation, would be that, and I mentioned this, I know about a month ago at one of our meetings, maybe it was 6 weeks, and never really got any traction. I never really pushed the issue, but I'd like to maybe start setting out some statistics, that we can review on a bi-weekly basis or even a weekly basis, where, we're reviewing specific numbers from the county or from, maybe maybe Aaron is able to gather that up for us or someone at the city level, so that we can know, what is the hospital census, not only in our area, but around the surrounding communities, which we're gonna rely on if we end up having a big peak. Numbers like St. Croix County cases and the number of cases that are in the communities around us. I'm not really sure, we had a very thorough presentation a while back that showed me what we were what people are watching, and I think if at city level we need to keep our thumb on that pulse. And I'm just not comfortable saying, well, our hands are tied, we can't do anything, it's up to the county to call the state of emergency, and we haven't really had the conversation on what are our what's our threshold. And I also want to just add a couple of things. I know masks are controversial, and I find that very sad, because right now there are a lot of aspects of COVID. At first everyone was very skeptical because there was a lot of misinformation going out, and we all as a community, we didn't know what to believe and what not to, but now there's some things we can really kind of all get our arms around. And one is that it's a highly contagious disease. We see it on a exponentially upward course right now all across the country. I think we all agree that we want a vaccine, but we can't count on it. We can't count on it quickly anyway. And even I've recently read that even having the illness does not confer long-lasting immunity from it. So, so we don't know how successful a vaccine is going to be. That's kind of one of the scientific bases of the availability of a vaccine working. Third, I know that we can agree that when we overrun our hospitals and our healthcare system, bad things happen. You know, I can't even imagine being one of these healthcare workers who has to hold a camera up day after day between loved ones at home and someone who, you know, can't speak. I mean, it's really heart-wrenching, and that level of stress on these healthcare workers for a long extended period of time. Again, you know, bad things can happen. But even fourthly, you know, when this vaccine is just wreaking havoc on our economy, and if we have to shut down again, we just have to do everything we can as a society to avoid that. We can't take that economic fallout again. So two factors in the economic that I've thought about a lot in the past few weeks. I know we all talk a lot about small businesses and their implication for a second shutdown for any of them, and I do want to speak to that. But I've also been speaking a lot lately to parents with children, school-age children in their houses. So they're trying to juggle working at home, having their family's income secure, yet they have children that they're supposed to be tutoring and helping out. All I'm hearing from these families are, please God, please do not shut down our schools again. And, you know, by a rapid increase in this virus, we've got implications there, and those families are financially impacted by that. And I worry about those people. Small businesses too, though, that's where I'm getting the most feedback, is that small business owners took it the hardest during the first shutdown. You know, they were shut down. Most of them didn't get any PPP loans because they had to shutter their doors, so they didn't have payroll, and that was one of the requirements to receive those funds. So, you know, small retail service industries, they got hit really, really hard, and none of them want. Most of the people reaching out to me are, I won't be able to open again. So they're working really hard to protect their employees from getting this virus, and they're not being able to do that. And so they're scared. They're scared that their employees are going to get hit with it. And meanwhile, people are walking into their stores, not wearing masks. And since the requirement has been not made at the federal level, not made at the state level, not made at the county level, it's being made, that requirement to require masks is falling on the people who manage our indoor spaces. And it's just it's not fair to them. They were the ones who took the biggest hit. You know, I'd like to compare this exhalation of you know, germs and the virus. You know, I hate to admit it, but I at one point smoked cigarettes in my life, and I could blow smoke from here, you know, across the room, no problem. And it filled up the space, right? So I know everyone's saying it's my right not to wear a mask, it's my liberty, you're trouncing on my rights. But, you know, we made indoor smoking rules because when I exhale a lit cigarette and I spray it all over the room, I'm trouncing on your liberties. I'm trouncing on the non-smokers' liberties. So we have to be respectful both directions. And the only way, you know, this isn't someone walking into a little retail store holding a lit cigarette. This is, you're exhaling and you can't stop exhaling. And it's been proven that if you wear a mask, you're gonna not spread it as much. I want us as a city council to stand up for what we know is right, back up our small businesses, back up our families who absolutely need school to happen, and recognize that there's 3 things we can do. We can stay safer at home, and that didn't work at all. None of us blue, red, purple, green, gold, black. Nobody likes staying at home. It damaged our mental health and it tanked our economy. So nobody wants to do that. So there's only two other things we can do. We can wear a mask, and nobody wants to wear a mask. I get it. I don't like wearing a mask. If it's hot, it fogs up, it causes me to have to remember one more thing when I'm walking out the door. It's a hassle, but I do it because I know I'm doing my part. And besides masking, we can social distance. And we can respect each other's space around them and stay clear of them, whether or not one or both of us are wearing a mask. But I'm not even seeing that happen. In the grocery store, I have non-mask mask wearers barge right in between two people who are 6 feet apart. You know, we need to be civilians, you know. We live in a civil society, and so that means we need to be civilians. And the only thing we as civilians can do to try to curb the impact on our country and in our communities and our states is to wear masks and social distance. And, you know, previous generations have made much bigger sacrifices than having to wear a mask and social distance. I just want to open up the conversation so that the six of us are talking about this, talking about our options, talking about what data is going to be the threshold where we do maybe have to cross that line and impose some actual mandatory requirements that can keep our communities safe and our businesses operating.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
I guess my viewpoint is that the purpose of a mask is to prevent you from contaminating someone else, not to, or maybe a secondary protection for you, but that's just consideration for other people. It has nothing to do with your rights. It's just being considerate. And we can approach it from that direction. Some of the thoughts I had running around were, can we create a poster for the small businesses that says, the city of Hudson requests that you wear a mask and that you socially distance 6 feet. And that's a sign of support. It's not a requirement.
That's already been done by the chamber.
But that's not the city of Hudson saying it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I don't see those signs everywhere either. I know the ones you're talking about, but they're not everywhere. But I think what are the things that we can do? You know, and those are the kinds of things that we can do currently until we declare a state of emergency where we can actually have some powers to say this is what's going to happen. But we need to request it. We need to model it. So it's a pretty weak case. But at least we're saying something. We're not just standing by and letting it happen to us.
I think with the numbers that we've got in St. Croix County and how quickly they are going up, that I think that we do have enough information to declare a state of emergency and to put a mask ordinance in place. And the emails that I've gotten, a lot more people are asking specifically for a mask ordinance. And I've only gotten a couple of emails saying, no, don't trample on my liberty to not wear a mask.
Anybody else? You know, I guess the question I have is the small business people that are concerned about this, do they have a mandatory mask requirement in their facilities? I mean, we know that there are a number of stores around here, a number of retailers that are requiring people to wear masks, and people either comply or they can't go in. And it seems to me that people, rather than imposing their own rules on the people that walk through their doors, are asking government to impose the rules for them.
Well, respectfully, I've been told by some of them that they don't want to be the mask police. You know, they don't want to say, "Hey, we have a mask requirement in our store. If you'd like to come in, here's a mask. You can wear. You can buy for $1 or something like that." They don't feel like they already took such a big hit on the first closure, that to turn away, potentially turning people away at the door. They just don't want to be the people who, are taking the hit on it again. They feel like they took a big hit, and they did.
Sure, I get that. So they don't want to police their own facilities, and instead they're going to ask our police department to do that. And now our police are going to be at more risk because they're going to be dealing with people that are not wearing masks, when otherwise they wouldn't even be encountering those people necessarily. So let me ask this: our numbers are not increasing that drastically percentage-wise. We've expected this. We've talked about it. The health director from the county came in and told us we're going to see spikes. We're going to see hills and valleys as the state and our county and our city open up. It doesn't matter if we wear masks or not. They're going to go up and they're going to go down. Now, if we do wear masks, I would agree that, and I wear my mask when I go out because I want to be respectful of people as well when I go into different stores and out in public spaces. So, but, we could mitigate it, I guess, the increase for a while, but I think overall we're still going to see that increase. So percentage-wise, it's not going up as far. The county certainly doesn't believe that we've seen this to the extent that they need to impose any type of restriction. It's my understanding that as of today, we still have not had a single case in Hudson Hospital. Is that true?
I can't confirm what's exactly been in Hudson Hospital. I know that they have been providing us statistics about bed use and things that they've asked that they not be released publicly for their own reasons. But I know Sarah asked about this a little bit too. They are saying that they're not under any stress right now. I mean, they're reopening a lot of things to visitors again. Things like that. They're kind of easing.
I thought I saw something that came from them that said that they were very happy the fact that they had not had any of the cases in ICU or whatever anyway. So,
correct.
Anybody else doing this anywhere in the state?
Right now, there's no mask ordinances in the state at all. You've got, I believe, at this point, there's four local safer at home type ordinances that I'm aware of. Eau Claire City County, Madison and Dane County, Beloit, and then Racine. They're the only ones that I'm aware of that have local safer at home. None of those have any sort of mask requirements.
Well, Racine does, but it's in litigation.
Right.
They've been sued, and it's been held at the circuit court to be unconstitutional. It's now on appeal at the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals has put a stay on the circuit court's order. So it'll be decided at the Court
And I know
of
that the
Appeals.
city of Milwaukee, from what I read, is going to bring a mask ordinance up, I think, later this week to discuss it. So there's not much to go off of as far as other places with it yet. Now, I know in Minnesota, you're seeing some cities do it. But obviously it's a different state, different laws, different courts, things like that. So there's a few cities I know that have done it.
How many of those cities do they have to declare a state of emergency? Are they playing by the same rules that we are? They have to declare a state of emergency before they can impose that type of restriction?
In Minnesota?
Well, no, in Wisconsin, you have to have a basis for requiring people to wear a mask, and the basis is
so in
a state
Racine,
of emergency.
In Racine, they declared a state of emergency?
They did, but I have their ordinance, and what they say is they've got a confirmed number of 1,411 positive COVID cases. According to the Department of Health Services, they're higher in Racine County per capita than in any other county in Wisconsin. And almost 70% of the positive COVID cases in Racine County are in the city of Racine. So you have to lay out what they're recommending is in an ordinance, in an emergency declaration, you lay out the basis for the emergency. And so that's what they're doing.
And it was the city and not the county?
That, It was the city, but I believe the city has a health officer. So they're different
Okay,
from
so they-
us in that.
Sure, okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate you, Sarah, bringing this up. And it is a difficult conversation. And unfortunately, it's become kind of a polarized issue, political issue. And it's really a scientific issue. It's really science we're talking about here. So I think for me, I would be open to looking at this. I don't know exactly at one point. You know, one of the emails I got this week basically said, at what point, you know, would you draw the line? And it's a really difficult question to answer because I don't have a magic number in my head. I know that the trend for St. Croix County is trending very high right now. So I looked at the state health website just before the meeting here, and we have 218 cases already confirmed, and our rate has gone up from 0.46 per 100,000 when the state Supreme Court overruled the governor. It's now 248 per 100,000. Now, you might, on the one hand, that's relatively low, right? But on the other hand, it's all about the rate increases. And so we currently in St. Croix County, the state health department is saying we have a high activity level. They rate them as low, medium, and high. We have a high activity level. And then there's something called the trajectory level. And we are moderately high in the trajectory level for where it's going. So I, as a public official, I'm very concerned about these numbers. I think it is wise for us to start thinking about at what criteria we would establish to move in this direction. I do think if we move in this direction, and I'm open to looking at that, we have to be very careful about how we do it. So I would have several questions. So one of my big questions right now is, you know, what is the school district going to do this fall? Because, you know, the schools are in Hudson, so I think we need to be in close consultation with the superintendent. I don't think we want to pass something that the school might be uncomfortable with, you know, first graders, kindergartners. I think we have to work with the school district. I don't know what its position is, or the school district's position is. I don't know if they've worked that out for their plans for the fall yet, but I think, you know, my preference would be to wait and see what they're thinking. I think we need more direction from the county health officer. It's really primarily the county health officer's legal job and responsibility to give us advice on this issue. I have personally found them a little bit difficult because I'm not getting a lot of direction. So I think we need to follow up with the county health officer. I would like to think we need a public hearing, quite frankly. I think we should call a public hearing at our next meeting and say, we need to hear from the public. We need to hear from the business owners Sarah's talking about, but we need to hear from customers. People are at all different places, but we do public hearings on a lot of other issues, you know, for legal reasons. But this is an issue that I think is really potentially divisive, but I think we need a public hearing to bring people together to say, how would this impact you, right? I would be concerned about the language of any ordinance we pass. Specifically, I would want to know the penalties. So what kind of penalties are we talking about? I would specifically want to look at the language in terms of enforcement. Who are we asking to enforce this? Is this the police department? Is it enforceable? What does that involve? I would want to look at the duration of such an ordinance. Are we talking about a 3-month ordinance? Are we talking about a 6-month ordinance? Are we talking about an ordinance that we would remove once the rates of high activity are down to moderate or low rates? Is this something, as the mayor was saying, these things can kind of peak and go down? I think that's really important. And I think basically the data has to drive it. I am concerned because if you look at the graphs, it has quadrupled in St. Croix County since the state Supreme Court overturned the governor. The other thing I want to say is I just want to say this publicly. It's a massive failure of state government right now. It is a massive failure. And it's putting us in positions that we're all uncomfortable because you know what? None of us are experts, which is why we need a county health officer. None of us are experts. None of us are scientists. None of us are doctors. We need to listen to the data of the medical community. And then the other thing is I think the point about the ICU beds and the health capacity, we have to be careful with this because it's not just St. Croix County. Most of the folks that we have, my understanding is, would go to this Twin Cities if they need an ICU. So they'd be going to United, or they'd be going to, one of the Twin Cities hospitals. So we not only need to be tracking our data in St. Croix County, we need to be looking at Dakota, we need to be looking at Washington, we need to be looking at Ramsey County, because their rates of hospitalization are going to really be the bottom line in terms of where people are going to go from Hudson. So I think it's immensely complicated. Unfortunately, it's been politicized, and it doesn't need to be. But I think we need to really think through language. I'd like to see a public hearing, and I'd like to really keep tracking that data and get some better input, I think, or more specific input from the St. Croix County health officer that can kind of guide this decision. So bottom line, we're all in an uncomfortable position because the upper echelons of government haven't, in my opinion, haven't done their job. And so the question is, where does the buck stop? And unfortunately, in this circumstance, it stops with the local government here. Probably none of us signed up to do this, right? But it's our job to protect the people of Hudson. So we need to figure out how to do that and do that in a way that, is rational, is data driven, and makes sense. And again, I don't know what point that is, but I'm definitely open to more conversation, Sarah. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Sarah, what are the parameters that you're thinking about? So you've talked about businesses. Where else are you thinking that masks would be required?
I personally think that any indoor space within the city limits would be where we should.
What are you going to do with bars and restaurants?
Well, I've been looking at other cities, and I think it's not even very far away. It's as close to Minneapolis that has said, so when you get to the hostess stand, you're wearing your mask. They bring you to your table, so when you're walking through other, spaces with potential people sitting in them, that you're not exhaling 100% on them. You have a mask. When you get to your table, you're able to unmask. But if you do get up to go to the facility or pay your bill or whatever somewhere else, that when you're moving through the restaurant, you're wearing a mask. When you're sitting at your table, you're allowed to not wear your mask.
Okay.
I forgot one more point, if I can, Mr. Mayor, just interject this. I think we have to be smart about if there's exemptions to this. I think we need to look at people with, for example, if they have asthma or if they have other underlying conditions or something from the medical community, instead of maybe across the board, to try to figure out how this would work for certain folks. So I just think there's a lot of, I like the overall concern. I don't know, again, if we're at the threshold right now, but I don't also know how we make that judgment. It's difficult. The other thing I'd say, it's probably smarter for us to be proactive than reactive. So I think the longer this goes and the higher those counts go, we're going to be more and more reactive. It would be smarter, I think, probably to be proactive about it. So,
okay. Anybody else?
Yeah. One of the concerns that I've got is that the numbers are going up quickly, and if we wait much longer, the numbers continue to go up quickly, that it's going to be at a point where we miss the opportunity to really keep those numbers down. So I'm ready to really look at a mask ordinance now because of that. I think that it would be helpful to get a copy of the ordinance from Racine so that each of us can take a look at that and see what we would agree with, what we don't agree with. I think that it would be good for us to ask Catherine to draft an ordinance so that we are ready to implement it. When the numbers continue to go up, that's where I'm at.
before we could adopt an ordinance, I think we'd have to have an emergency declaration under that WSStat 323.14. I am happy to give you the Racine ordinance, but in my opinion, it's all it really does, and this was the trouble the circuit court judge had with it, is it just refers to all kinds of standards, the WHO, the CDC, State Department, without giving the substance of those standards. And so part of the problem the judge had with it was, how can anyone looking at this ordinance know what the standards are? They're not really in the ordinance. You have to get a link, and then, I mean, if you've been on CDC or World Health Organization, his biggest problem was that it was very difficult for a regular person to look at this ordinance and to know what the rules are. So I'm happy to give it to people, but I wouldn't recommend that the city adopt an ordinance like that. I mean, even if you go the emergency declaration, I think we need to find something better and maybe just come up with. So there's real pitfalls with just the way this is structured.
Do you have suggestions on how to restructure it?
Well, I've seen it, just as Sarah was, or Paul was saying, people have different conditions. I think I've seen language, but it's all recommending language, but wear masks if you're able, meaning, and maybe you need to put more substance into that, but recognizing that some people have conditions which make it very difficult for them to wear a mask. So I think we can find language on that. I think the biggest difficulty, if it's difficult to have a conversation about it, it's also difficult to enforce it. You're going to have a letter from your doctor if you're going around without a mask, that kind of stuff. But there's ordinances out there and we can look at them, but nothing's going to be perfect. And depending on even, is there a basis for an emergency declaration? The cases are going up, but what's the hospitalization looking like? You have to look at all of that. So I'm just saying you can do things to hopefully make it enforceable and valid, but it's subject to challenge.
What are the legal requirements for having an emergency declaration?
Well, what the advice we're getting from, I get this municipal law newsletters, you need to present the basis, facts and circumstances in your emergency declaration as to why you consider it an emergency. It's facts and circumstances in your area. So that's why it's got to be based on the data. Are our hospitals getting overrun, or are they seeing their numbers of COVID cases increasing? Deaths, I looked at the St. Croix County COVID dashboard. The county has 1 death. I did ask the health officer to send me after this past weekend, what the numbers are for City of Hudson, which she did at our last meeting, but she didn't this time. City of Hudson, Town of Hudson, Village of North Hudson, St. Joseph, and Troy. And I can ask her if she would just give that to us on a weekly or maybe, more often basis. And I think she'd be willing to do that. We just need to get it set up. But those are the types of numbers that, or you need to look at to make the case for an emergency. Once you have an emergency, you need to make the case, and I don't think that would be as difficult, for wearing masks to mitigate that emergency. There's certainly opinions on both sides, but there's opinions in favor, saying that masks do help. So I don't see that as a hurdle. It's mostly the emergency and then the enforceability of it. I just think, and that, I mean, it would be, if you're going to adopt it as an ordinance, it would have to be our police department. And the other thing is, what would be the penalty? Are we talking just a forfeiture, which I imagine that's what it would be? You want to give some incentive to wear a mask. But those are the issues that I see.
Does the county have some plan as far as what their criteria would be for passing a mask ordinance?
Not that I know of. I talked with both the corporation counsel, the county attorney, basically, and they weren't, and this is back before June 15th, after the Supreme Court, overturned the statewide health order. He wasn't getting any feedback that there was the political will to adopt an ordinance like that. They have their recommendations. So what they did was the health advisory. That's in place. I think they may have actually, and it was done before, the more recent uptick in cases, but I think they may have actually lifted some of the restrictions on like outdoor numbers on outdoor gatherings. But they just do the recommending language, as does Eau Claire. We recommend, or we encourage people to wear masks. That way you make a statement, you don't get into litigation really, because you're encouraging it.
And that's a logical way.
And maybe the more people, and I think more people are wearing masks, the more people that wear masks, more are likely to start wearing masks. And that's just my impression.
Recommendations?
Well, I would absolutely like to be given, data, whatever's available to us.
I will ask her for that, and Aaron can too, and between the two of us, we'll get him to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can get the hospital data. I'll see what I can get that they're comfortable releasing and things like that. So that's not a problem.
As well as the local cases.
Yep,
that we can get from Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly said the last time that she would do that, but then when
we need that. We have to have that before we make any decision on anything here. I would think. I would hope.
So I guess I would just, mirror what Joyce said, where, asking you to draft up a reasonable policy, and maybe it is, a twofold phase where we draft up a health advisory, and then, but having, being prepared in case, things really go wrong and really fast when school opens up. And I mean, I want to be ready. I want us to have that draft ordinance in place with, yes, fill in the blanks of enforcement and penalty and all that. We don't need to settle it all, but having something ready in the event that we need to act quickly because there are citizens endangered due to, a rapid uptick.
No.
I want to be ready. That's all. I just want to be ready. We don't need to go calling a state of emergency today, but I think, I want to be ready.
I think we need to keep this on the agenda for the upcoming meetings until further notice, so that we can continue to discuss it and look at what's needed.
Joyce, I think, Joyce, I appreciate what you're saying, but I think you need to tap the brakes a little bit here and get your numbers. We got a lot of information to get together before we start declaring an emergency. A lot of information to be gotten.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's a request then to have it on the agenda for the next meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll do that. All right, anybody else?
Yeah, just to be clear, I want to kind of set the stage and let everyone know that, the from the federal level, Our president has declared a state of emergency 3 times, once in January and a couple times in March. On a state level, the state of Wisconsin declared one on 3/12. On a county level, St. Croix County declared a state of emergency on 3/16. And if I'm not mistaken, North Hudson also did a state of emergency. So I think we've really been careful, and I appreciate the deliberation, but I want you to realize that we're sitting in a county and in a state and in a country that have all declared a state of emergency. So I don't see the declaration of the state of emergency as a big deal in that sense. What I'm more concerned about is the exact language that would be formed around this.
That's fine. And I just, Paul, and I hear what you're saying, but you know, I guess I would take my guidance at this point, and not to say that we shouldn't continue to have a conversation, but we don't have a community health director here. The county does, and even though they've declared a state of emergency, they have not imposed any type of restriction like this. And of course, that department's job is to be monitoring all this information and then making the recommendation. And I think she actually has the authority to mandate something like this, absent any type of action on the county by the county board, at least until they have a chance to meet again. So, but I'm not trying to limit discussion here. I'm just saying, you know, putting it into perspective that we do have a county under a state of emergency that has a health director that is monitoring this a heck of a lot closer than any of us have the ability to, and we're relying on her actually for the information that we're going to be using and any deliberation that we're going to have about whether to declare a state of emergency. So,
and I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, and I think that's the natural spot, and it makes more sense to do this on a county level than on a state level.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. So I'm hearing that. I think we need more direction, more communication with the county health officer. I would totally agree.
All right. Well, we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting. All right. Is it okay if we move on?
I think one point we need to consider in comparing whether we abide or work with the county or where our direction is coming from is that we're the epicenter of a lot of people coming from a state that has a much higher concentration of cases. And so we are probably going to be the first. In fact, I'm really quite amazed that we haven't seen an issue given the number of Minnesotans that are over here on any given weekend, any given day. I was downtown Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I can tell you that 75% of the license plates are from Minnesota. So
yeah.
It's really surprising that we haven't seen an effect. So we need to be looking at that's what's happening here as closely as well as working with the county on that, and we may be a special case that they can help us with.
I'd like to credit Kip for that because I think it's the water. All right, so we'll move on. Review the plan for church on Vine request to use Lakefront Park for July 30th, 2020, August 27th, 2020, and October 1st, 2020.
Nope, the council had just asked that if we get any requests of larger size gatherings that to use our parks, that they bring a plan. So if you look in your packet, it's out of order, but it's on page 31 is their plan for what they'll do to stay in compliance. It's basically the same plan as the one that the Hill City Church is using. So keeping they'll have monitors enforce the 6-foot distance. They'll have an established entry point provided. So those who need masks and hand sanitizers will be given it as they walk in. The musicians on stage will stay 6 feet apart. There'll be hand washing and there will be no shared communion. So, we did approve the Hill City Church under those requirements. It went well. So in this case, we'd recommend that their plan pretty much matches Hill City. So I see no reason why not to approve this one as well.
Okay. We have a motion?
To approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor? I'm sorry.
I have discussion.
Yep, go ahead.
It's the way it reads, it's implied that they're going to wear masks, but I would prefer to see that in a stronger statement that they're going to encourage everyone to use masks. So that's the only thing I would ask.
I'll pass that along.
In the future, that when these things come in front of us, that we we emphasized the importance of wearing masks.
Okay. Sounds good. Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. I don't have anything for anybody. Anybody else? Future agenda items that we haven't discussed already? Anything?
Yeah, Addison asked for an open conversation with the council and the police chief, and I would like to start the plans to hold that conversation.
Move to adjourn.
I just have I have a question on
Yes.
that conversation, Joyce, too. So, I don't know, or should I bring it up at a later time, Kathy?
Well, if we can't talk about it in substance today, so yeah, put it on the agenda for next. That's what I would recommend.
Well, yeah, my only, I'm trying to ask about open meeting law, if that's in any way a problematic thing for open meeting law.
I'm not sure I think you're talking about having an open meeting on, and I'm not recalling the petition.
Yeah, it's just in general, anytime we have a majority of the council present, it would be an open meeting. So it would be posted as such.
Okay.
All right.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.